the answer is to keep trying and to create so much pain that the pain of not changing exceeds the pain of changing.
You Open the Books published a story on your Substack, which I highly recommend people go to and follow. You guys are doing great work trying to bring transparency to government spending and all of the nonsense that's going on there. Your latest post from this morning, which we ran on Real Clear Politics this afternoon, is about DOGE's unfinished business. Explain to our listeners what you're talking about here.
Yeah, Tom, look, I think the task of cutting spending is enormously difficult and complicated. And as you know well, so when I worked in the Senate, I spent years working for a representative, then Senator Tom Coburn. He was one of the very few members that not only talked about cutting spending, he successfully did it. And so this is one of these like white whale topics. Oh, if we could only cut spending in Washington. Well, the reality is there have been success stories. The successes haven't been nearly as big as we'd like them to be. And so the message that I'm trying to communicate through Open the Books is to say it is possible to do this. The public overwhelmingly wants more efficiency, and not just more efficiency, they want a transfer of power and authority from the federal government to their lives. So every dollar saved in Washington is a dream realized somewhere in America. Because when we shift power from the federal government back to individuals and local communities, you see freedom expand. So that's kind of the vision and the dream. And back in the Tea Party era, we actually cut spending by almost $950 billion over a 10-year period. And a really helpful reality check, as you remember the earmark battle, when Coburn went after the bridge to nowhere in 2005, that was 7 years after he started going after earmarks. So in 1998, took 7 years for that vote to happen. And then it took another 5 years for an earmark moratorium to come into effect. So that was a 12-year fight over one area. So as we kind of critique and look at what DOGE has done, the reality check that's helpful to say is, number one, it is possible to cut spending. Number two, it's a lot harder than it looks. It's a lot harder to make these changes durable. And that's really what I want to get across in this column, is to say that if you really want to have an honest conversation about what DOGE is doing, you have to ask the right question. This isn't like the legacy media does these fact checks of DOGE. Well, are the cuts real or not? Well, it really is not that simple. It's a question of, are the cuts durable? In other words, is it going to be hard or easy for a subsequent Congress or administration to reverse what DOGE has done? And in politics, it's a truism to say there are no permanent victories or defeats. Attitudes, sentiments change. Programs that seem permanent can often be here today and gone tomorrow. So this kind of the takeaway is that DOGE has identified a very, very rich target list, and it's really up to Congress. It's Congress's responsibility to enact these savings and make them durable. Now, even though DOGE's quote cuts, they're at a minimum very clear and strong signals of the administration's and the president's potential intent to veto bills that do not follow these requirements. So it does have force behind it. It isn't just an advisory group, outside government. It's part of the administration. So I would sort of give Elon more credit there than he gave himself.
You mentioned Senator Tom Coburn. He was the OG DOGE. What do you think he'd think of the DOGE movement and how it was received in Congress by, Democrats and the media? And they got off to a roaring start and seemed to get bogged down with lawsuits and the like. But how do you think Coburn? What's he?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think about this a lot all the time. Yeah, I think he would be absolutely elated that Elon Musk gave his time and attention to this cause. And again, back in the Simpson Bowles era, after the financial crisis, 2007, 2008, we would have killed to have had someone of his stature, of Elon Musk's stature, in our corner. Because here you had, even though Coburn was known in conservative circles, we didn't have the technologists of our day fighting with us. We didn't have a Steve Jobs or Bill Gates coming alongside of us saying, hey, this is a really sensible thing to do to downsize the administrative state that's been growing like gangbusters for 90 years, now 100 years. And so I think he would be thrilled that Elon was even a part of this conversation. And so I have a lot of consternation with, it's a very Washington thing to sort of second guess what Elon Musk did or didn't do. And that's all good to like critique it. But Elon has asked for feedback himself. He said, "Hey, if we make a mistake, we want to know." And that shows so much more maturity than most members of Congress, frankly, and most people in politics. All they want are strokes and pats on the back. So I think Coburn would be ecstatic that Elon was involved in it, but he wouldn't be surprised by the pushback. He would not be surprised at how hard it is. And he would be relentlessly focused on, let's get some wins. Let's really document in excruciating detail what DOGE has found and deliver those findings to the country, but also to the key members of Congress on committees who have the authority and power to make these changes permanent.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you've got this big, beautiful bill that's winding its way through Congress, passed the House by one vote. Now the Senate is taking it up, and seems like I saw a clip of Ron Johnson saying he wants more cuts. What do you make of, like, what would you grade the House bill on a, I don't know, 1 through 10 or A through F, however you want to do it? And what do you think is going to happen in the Senate?
Yeah. Well, I mean, not to punt, I would almost give it a 5 in the sense that I'm very sympathetic to kind of the Josh Brasheen Chip Roy case that we needed to have many more cuts, and they ended up voting for it because that the alternative was to have a big tax increase. Like, I understand the politics of it. I understand that to sort of make the perfect the enemy of the good was not a desirable thing. And, self-immolation is a one-use strategy in these situations. But we need to sort of take that bill. And the way I would answer that, there's nothing stopping Congress right now from working together on a bipartisan, bicameral basis to do a very serious overhaul of the administrative state. And just as we made some gains 10 or 15 years ago, we need to go way beyond what Coburn and DeMint and the Tea Party era did. Tom, we've been growing the administrative state for 100 years. And I'm kind of in the Milton Friedman camp of, let's go back to 4 agencies. Let's have, state, treasury, defense, justice. And just as a matter of compromise, we can put everything else in the basket of interstate commerce. But that's not extreme at all. That's exactly the sort of measured step that the country needs to take. And I think normal taxpayers would be very receptive to a serious overhaul of federal agencies.
But I don't see the Democrats with any interest or desire. I mean, I remember when DOGE first started and they were defending all these programs, right? And I was like, it would make political sense to be like, yes, we agree there need to be cuts, but let's do it together and let's work together and let's work through Congress, as opposed to just, going rogue or doing whatever. But there wasn't even that. There was just absolutely defense of the status quo. You can't cut a thing. So I don't know that there is enough desire for any sort of bipartisanship on this front. Am I wrong? You're not wrong right now, but the desire can be created. So let me give you one example on just the issue of transparency. Remember, it was, as you know, Coburn and Barack Obama who worked together to create USA Spending. That bill put all federal spending online back in almost 20 years ago, 2006. And that created an ecosystem of groups that have made a lot of what DOGE has already done successful. That put all the federal spending out there to be scrutinized and to be verified. So Democrats really, if they have any sort of neural activity, ought to get on the transparency issue and focus, because there's a need for an upgrade to USA Spending to give everyone the same look at the Treasury payment system that Elon has. Now, in terms of actually making the cuts within the agencies, is that the answer is to keep trying and to create so much pain that the pain of not changing exceeds the pain of changing. And if you go back to welfare reform, when Newt and Bill Clinton worked together, that took three efforts, a major bill. So if you look at the issue as it is now and where Congress is, yes, it looks almost impossible to do it. But the way to do it is to put together a very serious, thoughtful agency reorganization bill, and then make it get voted down, and then do it again, do it again, do it again. And you keep doing it until the average person says, why in the world are we not willing to rethink how we've organized federal agencies in 100 years? This is crazy. And to shift the crazy onto those who refuse
to reform government.
All right. Well, we are going to have to leave it there. John Hart, CEO of Open the Books. John, thanks for joining me. Really appreciate it. Again, go to Open the Books, go to the Substack, and you can certainly read on Real Clear Politics, DOGE's Unfinished Business, which is their latest post. John, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
You're right, Tom. Thank you.
All right. And that's going to do it for us. On behalf of Andy and Carl, I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP. You've been listening to Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM. Everybody have a great night. See you back here tomorrow.